So this is a really good graphic in terms of how early we are and how much growth there's going to be yet to come in Bitcoin. So you can see that little sliver there, that's Bitcoin. We got gold. And I also saw a tweet today saying that if 1% of global funds allocate to Bitcoin, 1%, Bitcoin passes gold for the market share. So just ask yourself that logically. Do you think that if Bitcoin continues to do what we think it's going to do, continue to grow in adoption and awareness, do you think that 1% of funds will be allocated to Bitcoin? 1%. If yes, we're going to have the new gold. And when the Bitcoin becomes gold, think about the price, think about the impact of everything with that. I mean, art, $18 trillion. I mean, okay, I get that there's some good art out there, but is it 18 times more valuable than Bitcoin? Real estate, here's a big one, 330 trillion bucks. And as more and more people start to become aware of what's happening here in Bitcoin, a lot of this 330 is going to start flowing into Bitcoin. So that's where we are right now. We're this little sliver. That's us. With that in mind, the topic of today's show is there's not enough Bitcoin. And there's not. There's not even close to enough Bitcoin. So let's think about this logically, because that's what we do on this show. Last week, I gave a prediction. I said that this is what the next 12 months are going to look like here. We're going to go through the halving. Halving is going to come and go. We're going to have a couple beers. Price will probably go up. It might go down a little bit. Who knows? Within May, June, and then summer comes. In the summertime, nobody gives a shit about their finances. Everybody just wants to be in the sun, enjoy themselves. They're on holidays. They don't care about anything. So we'll probably stay flat. And then I said in the fall, September, October, November, that's when everything's going to happen. And that's what happened last halving cycle, because it just makes sense. It just makes sense. So that's what's kind of to expect here. But the reason why I think that we're actually moving into this perfect storm in the fall is a bunch of reasons. Thomas just talked about the external factors in terms of people are paying attention to this stuff now. In 2020, nobody gave a shit about inflation. We didn't notice it before. So people are actually open to the idea of a potential different currency to get away from the costs of everything going up so much. So that's one. The next one here, though, I'm going to put this up here so I don't have to talk with my head down. There's lots of people predicting that based on what's happened so far on the exchanges with the ETFs, there's lots of people expecting that the Bitcoin supply on exchanges is going to completely deplete. I shouldn't say completely in front of that. Is on pace to deplete in 9 months. So 9 months from today is December. Exchanges are going to be out of Bitcoin if the ETFs continue to be buying at the same pace. So that's number one. That's very interesting that how that all works out time-wise. But the second part of that is Grayscale. Grayscale will run out of Bitcoin. The ETFs have been live for 3 months now, and Grayscale has run out of half of their Bitcoin so far in 3 months. So even though we've seen the BlackRocks, Fidelities accumulating all of this Bitcoin, it's actually not coming from other Bitcoiners like us. We're not selling our Bitcoin. Grayscale is selling their Bitcoin to them. And they only have so much of that Bitcoin. So they ran out of half of it in 3 months. So we can expect it'll continue to deplete. Summer will come. Things will probably slow down, maybe. But then after that, Grayscale is also going to run out of Bitcoin. Also right now, the exchange reserves of Bitcoin are at a 3-year low. 1.94 million Bitcoin are on exchanges. That's the reserves. 1.94 million Bitcoin. Which means, if you know how many Bitcoin are circulating out there, that means that approximately 18 million Bitcoin are locked up in cold storage, or off the exchange at least, in people's wallets. So that's a big deal. That's a very big deal. And the last part here that I wanted to pay attention to, and I think that a lot of people are sleeping on right now, is Saudi Arabia. And I talked about this on the Living in the Future show this week, but Saudi Arabia, people are sleeping on that. And I compared it to the golf stuff. So if you're a golf fan, or if you've even been paying attention to what's happening in the golf world, in the last 2 years, everybody knows the PGA. They're the premier golf tour. They have been for the last 100 years. But all of a sudden, this new golf league, I guess you'd call it, shows up called Live Golf from Saudi Arabia. And of course, the American media just had a heyday with it about all the blood money bullshit. That doesn't matter. The point is, Live Golf in 2 years, funded by the Saudis, came in and basically took not all of it, but the majority of the PGA Tour's talent in 2 years with money. So apply that to, like, just again, think logically here. If the Saudis decide that they want to take over the PGA Tour, and they do pretty much, not officially, but they've made a pretty big dent in the PGA. So they decide to do that with golf. They just, wake up one day, golf's really gaining some traction, is becoming more and more popular. They see an opportunity there. They take over the PGA Tour essentially. So if you don't think that they're going to do the exact same thing with Bitcoin, I think that you're nuts. And that's just like buying as much as they can. Never mind the energy component of it and converting oil and Bitcoin mining and all that kind of stuff. They're very energy rich, which is why they're dollar rich. So they're going to convert that into Bitcoin, and they're going to start buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. And you have to understand here that we've never had an asset like Bitcoin before with a fixed supply. So even Thomas there, he talked about the 1% and how much of a difference that is compared to what we have here. Gold has historically been our most scarce asset. Gold. And if you ask Peter Schiff, man, Peter Schiff is such a dipshit. Every time I open Twitter, for some reason, it shows his tweets. The guy's just obsessed with Bitcoin. And it's getting just like pathetic. But anyways, gold has historically been the standard of fixed scarce assets. And gold has a 2% average inflation rate. So after this halving here, after this Bitcoin halving happens, we're going to be down to a 1% inflation. And it's only going to go down and down and down over time. So all of these factors here, I think, is going to create the perfect storm for Bitcoin price. So you have to be prepared for this today. We've seen the price go up slowly for the last year, and it's kind of flatlined. And I think that it's going to flatline for probably the next 3 or 4 months. But when this thing starts to move with all of these things happening at the exact same time, the Bitcoin supply on exchange is depleting, Grayscale running out of Bitcoin, exchange reserves at an all-time low, Saudi Arabia and other countries coming into this stuff. Plus, I think that once we get to the 100,000 mark, that's when everybody's going to fly into Bitcoin. That's when retail is going to start picking up on this. Everybody's going to FOMO into it, and it's just going to be absolute pandemonium in Bitcoin. Just my opinion.